Tonight, we go behind enemy lines, and it's unlike any other enemy lines. Hits a little bit different when you're playing the defending Super Bowl champs for the first time since you lost to them in the NFC Championship game. We're going to talk about the Rams 49ers matchup next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And tonight, I've got a very special guest with me, my guy Ryan from the LAFB Network. This is the fourth time we've done this together. Last year, we rotated channels. We did both regular season matchups. We did the NFC Championship matchup, and we are doing it again this year. Ryan, first of all, before we get started, man, how you been? How's the fam? What's up?
I'm great. I mean, first of all, sick hype video to start. I mean, outside of the 49ers stuff, that was a great intro video. So a nice job there. But yeah, we're doing good, man. Can't complain. Life is good out here. Obviously a lot less stressful probably than where you are, but we can't complain and cover the champs. That's been fun. It's been an interesting start to the season. They're 2-1 leading the division, but there's a lot of concern around this team out here in LA, which I'm sure we'll get into, but family's good. Life is good. Work is good. Happy to be back on with you. Always love jumping on, and it's just been fun just getting to know you better. So thanks for having me back.
Absolutely, man. I got to say this too, because, we've had some DMs back and forth since then. First of all, obviously it's cool that the Rams won the Super Bowl. But for you guys, not for us so much, but for you guys.
Yeah. Not obviously for you. Yeah.
But for you, like, I just think it's so cool, man. You got to do the whole Radio Row thing. You got to rub elbows with some big time people. I saw the video where Pat McAfee came over and talked to you guys when you guys were like at your little station. Just what was that experience like for you, man?
Yeah, it was super blessed. I mean, I'm humbled every day of the opportunities we've been given here. And, it's funny. I started the LA Football Network. This is our third season, technically. We started it's like 2.5 years. And somehow we get the Rams win the Super Bowl. The Chargers, yeah, there's some turmoil, but a lot of fun with Justin Herbert and Staley. USC now gets Lincoln Riley, and USC is ranked 6th in the nation, and UCLA is 4-0. So super blessed with just the teams here that we cover. But dude, Radio Row was awesome. You mentioned the McAfee thing, and if you saw the video, obviously you saw. So he's coolest guy ever. Literally, he's on Radio Row. We're there the whole week. One of my guys had kind of just like shouted out to him, and he like came over and said hi. Later that day, we were eating lunch like away from Radio Row, just like grabbing a beer down the street, and him and his buddy are walking by to do the same thing, grab lunch. He recognizes my buddy that he met and was like, "Yo, Will, good seeing you again, man." Like, remembered his name, like said hi. Super cool guy. But anyway, so that video you saw, he's kind of doing rounds around Radio Row as everyone was wrapping up, and he just like stops by and like grabs a mic and starts talking. And so if you saw, this, but I'm sure your listeners don't.
Yeah.
We're all pumped. It's like a minute and a half talking. He finishes like, "Guys, let's catch up more later." Gives us all daps and stuff. I look, the mics are off. Got zero audio, as my mixer board was just all the audio was off because we were cleaning up for the day. So yeah, that was an experience, not capturing that. But yeah, what a cool guy. What a cool experience.
Yeah, at least you got some sort of video evidence that it happened. No, that was really cool for you, man. Getting to talk to you last year and just kind of going back and forth in DMs, I felt just great for you, man. I thought that was such a cool experience, and I'm glad you had a great time. You've been killing it over at LAFB, and you guys you cover all LA sports, big time football and whatnot. So proud of you guys. You guys are doing great. Happy to have you back. Let's get to this game though, brother. So we've got a big one coming up. As always, it seems like last 2 years, the 49ers are on the ropes. They could go either way. And then the Rams are right there. First of all, when this season started, and you can let me know if it's changed, but when this season started, what was your prediction for the Rams record-wise? And has that shifted at all?
It's a great question. So I predicted 13-4 in our preseason episode that we did, me and my co-host, the Madman. And let me put it this way. It hasn't shifted strictly because I think the NFC looks even weaker than we all anticipated. I think the Niners are going to figure it out. You guys are always, especially against the Rams, you guys always play us strong, but I think you guys will be okay. But, Tampa looks, obviously they've had injuries at receiver, but they haven't looked great. Green Bay's looked kind of vulnerable. I mean, Detroit, I saw someone just pop in here, a Detroit fan. Like Detroit's almost looked like one of the darlings of the NFC all of a sudden. So my prediction hasn't really faltered just because I don't think they're going to be challenged a ton, at least in the NFC. But there's definitely some concerns, but same thing. Like I said, I think the Niners will figure it out. I think the Rams will figure it out too, because defensively they look fine. It's more offensive and some injuries they've seen across the offensive line. But yeah, overall 13-4, I think is still kind of the sweet spot that I see them going.
Did you have them winning or losing that first week against the Bills?
I had them winning. So my co-host had them losing. I had them winning. And even my co-host had them losing. Didn't think it would be the 31-10 drubbing that they took that, was not good.
It's funny because obviously Niner fans want anything to just stick it to the Rams. So when they lost that game, the 49ers hadn't played yet. We saw obviously what happened against the Bears and whatnot, but 49er fans were just ready to dance on the graves of the Rams. And I'm like, hold on, guys. A lot of us think that Josh Allen's the best quarterback in the league, and a lot of us think that Buffalo might be the best team in the league. So when that team goes out and wins, I don't care what the margin is, you can't then also say best team in the league, best quarterback in the league, Rams suck. Like those two things can't go together. Now, the Rams have had some weird things going on. We can actually talk about that now. I didn't necessarily have it as a topic, but the Rams have had a little bit of a weird start. Yes, you guys are 2-1. But it hasn't looked the same. You guys brought in a stud in Allen Robinson. This is what I just noticed from afar. You guys brought in a stud in Allen Robinson who really has not been productive for whatever reason. Just what is your overall thoughts with what's going on with the Rams? Is it fixable? Is it that big of an issue? Just from afar, it seems like you guys aren't clicking the way that I expected a Super Bowl champ to click.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right in the sense that outside of offensive line, there wasn't a huge amount of changes within the offense. Obviously Allen Robinson is new, but you sub out Robert Woods, you sub out OBJ, and Allen Robinson, I think, is a very capable receiver, different skill set, different size, more of a jump ball down the field guy, not necessarily a speed burner guy. But it is again, not concerning, but it is interesting or eye-opening, everyone to say it, that he has not been that involved. I think it's definitely fixable. I mean, even if you look back to when OBJ joined last year, his first game, he had, two catches for 12 yards, and everyone was like, oh, is this trade worth it? And then the third game, I think he ends up getting like a touchdown. Then he has a touchdown every week following that for a 4-week stretch. So I think they'll get it right. I don't know if it's, they had the offseason to practice, but obviously no preseason games or any of that, and game time experience and game time speed and game time cohesion is very different than in practice in 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s. And I cover the Rams. So for those that don't know Rams practice, which why would you guys? The Rams don't even throw that much in practice. Like they do these installs where it's funny, dude, watching at training camp because fans hate it. Like I was at a training camp on a Saturday, 13,000 strong, and I'm not exaggerating, at training camp down in Irvine. They did not throw a single pass. It's Stafford dropping back. He has the ball and then he just like motions where he would go with it. So I think things like that are what's attributing more to kind of the slower start, and they're talented enough. They're well coached enough that they can still have a 2-1 start like they've had. Now, if we were in week 7 and these were still issues, then I think, and when we talk, maybe we'll talk again in the second matchup.
Yeah.
And if it's still going on, then it's concerning, but I think it's very fixable. It's just, finding that chemistry against good defenses and getting on the same page, which I think they'll get.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that's going on that you notice that could be contributing to some of the struggles as well, or you think that's one of the main ones?
I mean, the biggest one outside of that would just be the offensive line injuries, changes, whatever you want to call them. Andrew Whitworth retires, obviously future Hall of Famer. Joe Noteboom has never been a starter on this team. He's been a capable backup that has spot started for Whitworth, and he did well in those spot starts, but it's very different being a spot starter and now all of a sudden the starting left tackle of the defending champions. So that you have Brian Allen went down in week 1. He's been injured. So that's your starting center. At the time, Coleman Shelton was your starting guard, but when Brian Allen goes out, they move Coleman Shelton over to starting center. in comes Trayman Ankrum, who's never started a game in his career, 7th-round pick out of Clemson. Guess what? Well, then he gets injured, and now you sub in another rookie, an undrafted guy. You have Alaric Jackson, who is undrafted out of Iowa, who's got some spot starts. Rob Havenstein went down last week, but he's expected to go again this week. So really, if we're really getting down to it, Jesse, I think it's more so that the offensive line turnstile that has, which we're definitely getting into that concerns me the most about this game, because all the struggles you guys have being the Niners, defensive line and pass rush is not one of those.
It's not one of them. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 49ers offensive line is not so great either. So maybe we'll talk about that for both of our teams. But I want to ask you something too, just out of curiosity, because it came out, and I don't know how true this is, but it did come out that the Rams felt, I don't know why this came out, but the Rams felt when Trey Lance went down that Jimmy gave them a better chance this season to win games. So as a Rams, somebody that covers the Rams, do you feel like that's the case? Would you rather your team face Jimmy twice a year or face Trey twice a year?
I think we talked about this a lot last year, and I know your love for Trey, and my condolences to you and the Trey fan base. Condolences to him in general. You never want to see that to
sure.
any player, especially a young kid with how bright he is. Me personally, future wise, and just looking at your franchise wise, I think obviously you guys, I think, are very split. I see your conversations on Twitter all the time, but for me, I think Trey is the future. Like, Trey needs to be that guy. He's got the skill set. He has that ceiling, which we've seen Jimmy reach his ceiling. Now, for whatever reason, that ceiling of Jimmy, for some reason, does very well against the Rams. So, I mean, we saw last week against the Broncos, Jimmy single-handedly lost you guys that game. He couldn't put up more than 10 points. He had 4 turnovers by himself, or 3 by himself, whatever it was, with the fumble and the 2 picks. But against the Rams, that's not the case. I mean, the game-winning drive at the end of the season in week 17, the overtime win. However, he did have, some sloppiness in the NFC Championship game. So me personally, I think Trey Lance would have been I would have been more fearful playing him because of the unknown, because of the skill set he has, the athleticism he has. But for whatever reason, Jimmy has the Rams number and has actually performed well. So Rams specifically, seems like he does well, but against the future, I definitely think Trey is a much more capable starter moving forward for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it sucked, man. Having it happen so early, and it just sucks because we still don't have the answers that we hoped that we were going to get this season, right? Like, you want to see him progress. You hope by week 18 he's a much better player than he is in week 1, and you just didn't get to see any of it. And now he's going into year 3. Thankfully, he's still going to be 23 years old next year. It's not like he's old, but 3 years in, you still have no clue. You really need 2 full years to evaluate a player. So we're just not going to have the answers for a while. The whole thing is just a bummer for sure.
Yeah. I feel it's unfortunate for you guys, because that's usually year 2 is like where you get your answers. Like Josh Allen, right? Like it took him 2 years to show he was good. And that second year statistically was still bad, but you could there was those aha moments where like, all right, he is the future. Whereas you guys, you don't get that, unfortunately.
None of it. Literally none of it. All right. Give us a Rams player that maybe 49er fans aren't thinking about or don't know a lot about that maybe we should be made more aware of.
So here's a guy that is like one of the hot names this week. So maybe people have heard of him now, but I'm sure they didn't before last week. And it's Ben Skowronek, receiver for the Rams. He was a 7th-round pick out of Notre Dame last season. Ended up getting some playing time just due to injuries with Robert Woods. And then in the Super Bowl, OBJ goes down, and he has to kind of play. And, overall as a rookie, he did some really good things, but his biggest issue was drops. He had every team has that receiver that is like, you can see the talent, but they have that critical drop in games that just costs you things. And that was Ben Skowronek last year. And so coming to this year, he wasn't really a fan favorite. Everyone's like, why is he making the team over some other guys? Why is he out there? Well, through 3 weeks outside of Cooper Kupp, he's been their best receiver, and not just as a pass catcher, but you'll see a lot in this game. Probably, I don't want to compare him at all to Deebo Samuel because he's not, but he lines up as fullback in a lot of packages. And he's not necessarily a huge guy, but he's got that dog mentality, that blocking mentality. He had a play last week against the Cardinals, lining up as fullback, went and blocked JJ Watt and then ended up catching a pass on the same play. Like, so he was like basically chipping JJ Watt from the backfield and then caught a little curl route and had like a nice 12-yard gain. So he's a guy that, yeah, probably people haven't heard of, but he's carved out a very large role in the offense. Sean McVay loves him. Sean McVay loves any receiver that'll get his hands dirty and go out and block. And that's what Benny Sco, as we all call him, has become. So that's a guy I think that it's one that I think you guys will notice on Monday night. And again, not Deebo Samuel, but similar in the sense that they have different skill sets besides just lining out as an extra wide receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great thing to point out because I didn't know he was doing that. I did know he was a wide receiver. It's funny because I do these games live. So we do a thing on playback where we watch the games live, and it's very similar to this, except for the games behind us, right? And so we're commenting.
We're gonna start doing that actually.
It's fun, dude. It's a blast. You're gonna absolutely love it. But with that being said, when he caught a pass in week 1, because we did that game, it was opening night, so we did that game, and I couldn't quite tell who it was, but a white guy, right? So I'm like, oh, I think Cooper Kupp just caught a, and then everybody's like, oh man, are you profiling Jessie? It was pretty funny, but yeah, that's how I became aware of him. I do think he also, if I remember correctly, dropped a pass in the NFC Championship. But he was a rookie. But it's interesting that he's playing a little bit, that fullback position. It's just nobody has a Deebo Samuel, and that's fair. But just doing these interesting things with these players and moving them around, NFL's a copycat league, and it sounds like McVay's got somebody he can do that with a little bit. And coming out of the backfield, I mean, he's going to be matched up with linebackers more often than not, and you're going to win that matchup more often than not. So I'll be looking for that one. That might be a key to the game. Yeah,
when we've talked, not to cut you off, but we've talked a bunch about the coaching comparison of McVay and Shanahan. Yeah. And I mean, let's be real. They're gonna see what works for one and try to emulate that. I think McVay's seen how successful Shanahan's been with turning some of those athletic receivers into stuff. And he's like, all right, I don't have a Debo, but I'm gonna have some fun with one of my receivers in the backfield because obviously they don't keep a fullback like most teams. So yeah, definitely a copycat league, and they're best friends that are gonna try to kind of steal from each other when they can.
Yeah, 100%. C. Turley says, prayers to you and yours, Jessie. Love your show. Love when you're on with Grant, and respect your guests. Cool Rams fan. Yeah, listen, I always bring on guys that are super respectful. We always have a good conversation. We have a lot of fun. And then, we'll usually, hey, good game, or it was a close game. We usually talk in the DMs afterwards and just show a little love. But yeah, no, Ryan's been great the whole time. Thank you for your thoughts and prayers. We're good here. Send them to everybody down south because they are not doing so great. It's pretty crappy what's going on down south. So appreciate that though. Okay. Let's go a little bit opposite here, and we'll get into least confident. And it sounds like I know where you're going with that, but give me the matchup that you are most confident in when it comes to the Rams versus the 49ers in the favor of your Rams.
So I feel like we might have the same in both sides. If I'm guessing right, and I know you well enough and know the Niners well enough, but most confident I would say is probably the Rams defensive line and pass rush against the Niners offensive line. Obviously, with the loss of Trent Williams, arguably the best tackle in football, he's out like high sprained ankle, 3 to 4 weeks or so. Yep. So obviously won't be there Monday night. So that's a huge loss for you guys. And the Rams obviously, lost Von Miller in free agency. But with the addition, or I guess the combination that they have, obviously Leonard Floyd is your starter on one side. Everyone knows Aaron Donald. I didn't really need to talk about him much, who just had who just reached 100 sacks, the fastest ever for a defensive interior lineman.
Such a dog.
And he's probably not even far behind most edge rushers in how fast he got there. But outside of Leonard Floyd starter, you have kind of a heavy rotation with Terrell Lewis out of Alabama, who's very capable, just has some injury history. And then and a few other guys who have really kind of stepped up and taken that role to where they don't have to play every single down, but they can come in fresh and do some good things. So Justin Holland's the other guy out of Oregon that they traded or got from Denver. So I feel confident in the edge rush, but they really showed good promise last week against Arizona and really stepped up. And the defense in general really limited to Arizona. No touchdowns on that game. It was like a 5.4 average yards per attempt throughout the entire game. But it came down to really pressuring Kyler Murray. And we all know Jimmy Garoppolo is not as athletic as Kyler Murray, so he's not going to be able to escape some of that edge rushing. So most confident in, I think I would definitely say the Rams defensive line as a whole, specifically the edge rush against a kind of banged up Niners unit.
Yeah, what 100%. I mean, we're obviously going to match up on this one. The 49ers defensive line versus the Rams offensive line. And that was a big thing. Like when I looked at the Rams, I'm like, okay, they lost a Hall of Fame left tackle. They lost a Hall of Fame pass rusher. They lost two good receivers. They replaced them with a good receiver and a Hall of Fame middle linebacker. I felt like the Rams took a bit of a step back from what they were last year because of those things. And the Rams are obviously still a very good team, but that's an area where the 49ers certainly can exploit. And Stafford, for as good as he is, he will throw one up to your team. Maybe a few, right? It's just a matter of capitalizing. He's a gunslinger. He's out there to make plays, and sometimes it goes his way and sometimes it doesn't. So I think the 49ers can capitalize on that. I think third down and long is really where they can maybe make Matt Stafford pay, because I think he's going to try to squeeze it into tight windows or get a throw off, and that's where a pick may come. But yes, definitely defensive line versus the Rams offensive line is where I am the most confident as well. So no surprise there. I think I might surprise you with this one though, because I'm not going to go on the opposite here. Matchup that you are least confident in.
So I mean, I'll just piggyback off yours. Definitely the Rams offensive line against the Niners defensive line. And aside from the pass rush, Jesse, which you obviously just laid out, I don't need to repeat all of that, but for the Rams offense, for a McVay offense, which is obviously very similar to a Shanahan offense, to really be successful. Yes, Matthew Stafford has a lot of talent. Yes, he's a gunslinger. Yes, he has a tremendous arm, but the running game is what makes that offense go. And that's why Kyle Shanahan and whoever's been the defensive coordinator, whether it was Robert Saleh, now DeMeco Ryans, whoever it's been, have given the Rams fits, because the Rams cannot run the ball against the Niners. And then they have to throw it 45 times, which is a terrible recipe. I don't care who your quarterback is. And I think that's why when you look at last week's game, and obviously these are very different teams, but when you look at the Broncos offense, struggled horribly against the Niners. I mean, your guys' defense was balling out, but they ran the ball enough to keep you guys honest. So then in that last game-winning drive, Russell Wilson was kind of finally able to find a groove, hit Cortland Sutton a few times deep. You kind of stretched the defense a little, because Devontae Williams and Mike Boone and Melvin Gordon were able to run enough. Not super successful. They didn't get a lot of first downs, a lot of 3-and-outs, right, but it was enough to keep them honest. And the Rams, for whatever reason, whether it be because the offensive line, which now is even weaker, it seems like every game by the first quarter, they give up on the run and they're throwing every single play, and they end up running the ball 12 times over 60 minutes. And so that is why I'm not confident in that matchup at all, because they haven't run the ball well all season long. Cam Akers finally got going a little bit last week against the Cardinals. I think he had 12 rushes, 60 yards, and a touchdown, somewhere around that. But if they don't get that going, they're definitely not going to stop Nick Bosa and company in rushing Matt Stafford, and they're definitely going to force some turnovers, which we see every single matchup.
The more that we're talking about this, and maybe it's just some PTSD after watching an 11-10 terrible game. Both quarterbacks played horrible. We might be in line for something awful like that again, because neither of these offensive lines are going to protect their quarterbacks. It could get ugly for both of them. It really could. I hope I don't see football that bad again, though. I don't know if I can do it 2 weeks in a row, especially if the 49ers don't win. 49ers throwback here. This is where I'm going. He's reading my mind on this one. The matchup I'm least confident in is Jimmy versus Bobby Wagner. Yeah. He loves to throw it right at Bobby, man. Bobby loves to just sneak under and get a pick from this guy almost every time they play. He is the kryptonite to Jimmy. I don't like that matchup at all. Bobby Wagner, listen, he's not the same player, but he is still instinctive and extremely smart. And him against Jimmy G is just a matchup that he outwits Jimmy every single time. So that is the matchup that I am most worried about. I was hoping that he would go to the Ravens or something like that, which almost happened, and get him out of the division, because Jimmy Garoppolo versus Wagner is just not a matchup for the 49ers at all. Melissa has a question for you, actually. She asks, what are your thoughts on Talanoa Hufanga?
Dude, Hufanga is a baller. I was like, being covering the Rams, I was so bummed he went to the Niners. So I knew, what do you guys give him, the
Yeah.
fifth round? You
Yeah, I
got
think
pretty,
fifth.
yeah,
Yep.
fifth. I mean, at USC, I mean, I know it's obviously the Polynesian heritage, the hair. Everyone thinks of Troy Polamalu, but that's how he played
Mhm.
at USC. I think in the Washington State game in his last season at USC, which would have been in 2020, I believe, he had like 3 picks in that game, that's not really his type of game. But he's just a ball hawk all over. You making plays last week in the backfield. So Talanoa Hufanga, you guys got a good one there. I love seeing all the playing time he's already getting. You guys also got Drake Jackson, who I love out of USC, and I think that was another one. I'm like, God, another USC guy going up to the Bay. So, but yeah, great player. Hopefully you guys all like him up there, because I think he'll be that guy that, if he's not fully the starter, he'll be that spot player, or that nickel guy, not necessarily playing the nickel, but that third
Mhm.
or that sixth defensive back that will come in and just make plays when you need him, because that's what he is.
Yeah, 49ers throwback is reminding us that Jimmy will throw a pick against Bobby Wagner. Yeah, no, you're great to ask about Jackson and Hufanga, because you cover USC football as well. I do want to ask you about Jackson though, because he's starting to show a little bit of flashes. Now, he went through a lot of changes at USC.
Yep.
And not only from like scheme wise, but what he was asked to do, put on weight, lose weight. He was kind of all over the place. So just overall thoughts on Jackson. What did you see him go through in his time there? And why do you have confidence in him at the next level?
Yeah, great athletic specimen. If you ever want to watch any film on Drake Jackson, because again, it's hard to compare his all throughout the season because of all the changes, coaching changes, just how much of a dumpster fire USC was during his tenure. But his freshman year, it was 2018, I believe, when Keaton Slovis gets or it wasn't even Keaton Slovis, it was Matt Fink gets the start against Utah. And Drake Jackson in that game, I believe, had 3 sacks, 1 for a safety. USC was a huge underdog, ended up winning like 30-10 in that game. And Matt Fink had some great toss-up throws to Michael Pittman. But the reason USC won that game single-handedly was because of Drake Jackson. So you watch film like that, and that's when you see the talent on display, the work ethic, the motor that always keeps going. And so when you see stuff down the line, like where it's just, whether it's schematically or whether it's getting double or triple team because he's the only pass rusher on the defense that can actually get after the quarterback, I'm not concerned about that because I know what he can do and is capable of doing. And when you look at, I did this comparison during the draft last year, just obviously I'm a USC homer covering the team.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
But you look at the size, the intent, the weight, the speed, the combine times, every single measurable, him and Kayvon Thibodeau are the same player. The only difference was in their final season, Thibodeau had like 3 more sacks, not anything astronomical. So the fact that Thibodeau went top 5 and Drake Jackson went late in the second round, he has that skill set, that talent. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Kayvon Thibodeau, but am I kind of saying he can be as good as Kayvon Thibodeau? Maybe in a way. Maybe I'm giving you guys false hope, but I love Drake Jackson. I think you guys got a good one.
Yeah, I'm an Oregon Duck fan, and I watched Thibodeau a lot. I've seen a lot of Thibodeau. I I think he might be a little overrated. That's just me. I think there was a lot of good pass rushers, and I'm obviously rooting for him. I hope he's going to be good, but I personally think that there are other guys late like a Jackson that can produce on the same level as him in this league. And we'll see. Time will tell. Just like quarterbacks, I like to see at least 2 years, preferably 3 years of a player before I completely make a decision on them. But going into the draft, I was like, I know a lot of people like Thibodeau, but I watched a lot of him, and there are games he disappears, right? And for a guy that's supposed to be that guy, you don't like to see that on film. One thing in his favor that I did like is that he had nothing to play for last year. He was going to be a high draft pick. He had, I believe it was the ankle injury, and he came back early from that injury because he wanted to play football so much. So what I didn't understand when they were talking about Thibodeau is that, he doesn't love football. He's not a high motor. It's like, ease up a little bit. Come on. He's the opposite of what you're saying. So,
yeah. And last thing I'll say on that is, I like Thibodeau too. He's super talented. Seems like a really good, like, human being in general, and all that stuff that came out, I thought was just like people trying to hammer down draft stock. But that last comparison of he has had games specifically against UCLA, of course, where he has like 3 sacks and ends up like winning the game for Oregon single-handedly, but then disappears for 2 weeks. That was kind of Jackson's MO in a way, where you have those monster games and then disappear a little bit. I think he can definitely change that. But when you look at the value of that fifth overall pick versus whatever it was, 66, then it's like, okay, we're okay with that.
Absolutely. And C. Turley has a question for you. He says, Ryan, question for you, and I hope he's okay. He's a good guy, and I want you guys to be at your best. But is there any concern around Stafford's elbow?
Elbow gate. Yes, the question
Yeah.
out here.
It's all right. We had arm fatigue gate with Trey Lance. So,
Right. It's always something. I'll answer it this way. It's a weird thing because of, I would say 0 issue, not concerned at all, except we went through the same thing 3 years ago with Todd Gurley, where the team was saying, no, the knee's fine, we're good. But then he would be on like a pitch count. They got in a weird relationship. We obviously didn't see him play at all in the playoffs. They had to bring in CJ Anderson off the streets. Now, I definitely don't think it's that level, but that's the only reason where I'm like, maybe there is something going on. They're just trying to hide. But seeing him throw the last 2 weeks, I don't think there's an issue. Week 1 against Buffalo, that came out like, was he having those bad throws because of the elbow? And
right, of
I don't
course,
think so.
of course.
I'm like, no, they just got beat. They just got beat bad.
Soundly, yeah. Did he or did he not have surgery? I feel like there's conflicting reports on that. Like at first it was he decided not to, and then it came out that he did have surgery. So
no, he had minor surgery on it. Yeah.
Okay.
In the offseason after the Super Bowl. So
yeah.
and
So
I think
then he's probably better off than what people thought because of the surgery, right? Like I would think that would be a good thing, not a bad thing.
Well, I think that's why it became a big deal is that we knew, which is very strange to me, but we all knew that Cover the Rams knew that he had surgery back in like March. Like it came out in March, but for some reason nationally, it didn't come out till like a week before the Bills game that all of a sudden he had elbow surgery and it became this big story. And it's like, well, no, we knew that 6 months ago that he had surgery. So it's one of those kind of weird storylines that I think just snowballed and then they get destroyed 31-10 and he, has 3 picks and looks terrible. So I think, right. To answer your guys' question, I'm not real concerned, but there's definitely a little bit in the back of my mind, like we'll monitor it.
Yeah. Is this, you definitely got to be gun shy with the whole Gurley thing. Gosh, Todd Gurley, man, he's still only like 27. Yeah, it's crazy.
Crazy.
Absolutely nuts. All right. Finish this sentence for me. The Rams win if
they run the ball 25 plus times.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not even saying they have to be successful necessarily in terms of efficiency, but I've always said, and my listeners probably get so sick of me saying it, but I'm like, if the Rams run the ball 30 times a game, and I'm going 25 for this one because I know they will not run it 30 times a game. I just know 100%. But if the Rams run the ball 30 times a game, they have like a 0.98 winning percentage or 98% winning percentage. It's crazy. Like the numbers are insane. And so I think they win this game if they run the ball 25 times or more.
It's so funny because we obviously have coaches that are very similar when our answers line up. We don't talk about this. I just send you the topics and then we come up with our own thoughts as we do this. But I have the same thing to say, except for the number is 30 for the 49ers. 49ers got to run the ball 30 times. So to me, that's going to be a major key in this game. It sounds like it is for the Rams as well. Yes, if you run the ball and you run it, I think the 49ers have to be a little bit more effective because I do not trust Jimmy as much as I do Matthew Stafford. So I think the 49ers do have to be more effective. But I think if you're running the ball 30 times, you probably are being pretty effective. So I'm going to agree with you, except for opposite. 49ers have also got to run the ball a ton. All right, finish this sentence. Rams lose if...
I could do the cop out if they throw the ball 40 times. But I'll try to be a little more creative than that. I would say Rams lose the game if Deebo Samuel goes off. And that could be to the tune of, I'll put a number on it. If Deebo Samuel has 150 plus all-purpose yards, whether it's rushing, receiving, whatever, Rams lose this game. Because for whatever reason, every time they play, it's either him or George Kittle that just have like a ball game. And if they can contain, I'd rather them contain Deebo than as great as George Kittle is. But yeah, I think they lose this game if Deebo just goes off.
Yeah, and Deebo does tend to play well against the Rams. I could say the same thing about Kupp, though, to be fair. I mean, Robert Saleh, when he was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers, he did a great job. He identified that Cooper Kupp was the center of that offense. He shut him down, and they were able to win because of it. Now, the 49ers did beat the Rams twice last year, but DeMeco Ryans goes about it a little bit differently. He's not as worried about Cooper Kupp, and it killed them in the NFC Championship game. So I can agree with that. I'm going to say the 49ers lose if they can't convert on third down. Because in order to get to 30 runs, you're going to have to keep drives alive. Last week, the 49ers had their worst rushing performance of the season, and it wasn't because they weren't being effective. It was because they couldn't stay on the field. They couldn't stay ahead of the sticks, and they were 1 for 10 on third down and didn't convert that one until very late in the game. So they have to win on third down. And, one of the reasons Jimmy has won a lot of games with the 49ers, including against the Rams, is third down. He always is able to move the sticks and just keep drives alive. And we haven't seen that staple 8 to 12 minute drive from the 49ers that you are accustomed to seeing yet. Hopefully it's coming this week, but they've got to stay ahead of the sticks. They've got to convert on third down. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Let's wrap it up. Score prediction. Who wins this game? Why do they win this game? And most importantly, give us the score.
I feel like every time I've been on here, I pick the Rams, and I feel like the biggest homer. And I'm kind of like, I'm leaning almost Niners, except because of what I saw last week. And again, it's a week-to-week league. Everything is so different. But, and I'll get to my score prediction. This will be my explanation for why I'm not a homer, why this is just what I think. Broncos defense, super talented, super good, but they are running Evero scheme. Evero, the defense coordinator, comes from the Rams. He was the Rams secondary coach for the last, 5+ years since McVay came over. Super talented young coach that has such a bright future in this league, and obviously has made the Broncos defense. There's a lot of talented players, but he's turned them into a powerhouse, and they were able to really shut down the run. Now, Raheem Morris is going to run a little different scheme. I know Evero take concepts from Brandon Staley, from Raheem Morris, also from Wade Phillips, who was on the staff earlier ago. So it is different. But I think what the Broncos were able to do, the Rams will see that and say, oh, like that's a similar scheme to what we run. Here's how we can slow down that 30+ running game, which has just gashed the Rams constantly, especially last week or last year early in the season when you guys blew the Rams out and you were just getting 9-10 run gashes the entire game. So I think the Rams correct that. I think the addition of Bobby Wagner and Ernest Jones being second year, this is the best inside linebacking duo the Rams have had in over a decade. I know they lost some edge support, but really what you need when you stop the run is those inside backers, and they finally have that for the first time in I don't know how long. So I think that certainly helps, and we've seen them slow down the run. Even against Buffalo, they really did good against the run. It was just Josh Allen that torched them. So because of that, because of the defense, even though I'm terrified with this offensive line, I think they get it done. It'll be close because it always is. I don't think it's going to be a high scoring game by any means. I'll go 2017 3-point win for the Rams.
Oh, I think we saw somebody, Avtar Singh came up with the same score. All right. We got a 20-14 Niners. We got a 15-22 Niners. Of course, it would be a weird score.
Yeah, love those.
Rams win 27-10. Okay. Seeing some score predictions here. All right. I've got a thought process as to why I am also picking the Rams, by the way. Last year, Ryan, if you remember, we did this 3 times. I was wrong all 3 times on the 49ers and Rams games. First 2 times, I picked the Rams to win. I was wrong about that. Then we got to the NFC Championship, and I finally was like, you know what? Niners are winning this game. They've got their number. It's over. They've proven it to me. Niners are going to the Super Bowl, and that didn't happen. So
you're picking the Rams, meaning the Rams are going to lose.
That's the hope, okay? I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm picking the Rams. I seem to get this one wrong a lot, so I hope that I'm wrong again with this one. I do. I think what you talked about with the running game is super important. I also think Deebo Samuel was a relatively unknown player to the rest of the league, right? He did some things in 2019. He was hurt in 2020. I knew Deebo was coming strong in 2021. I predicted a breakout season for him. I said the words I used were the league will know who Debo is by the end of this year. Everybody will know that name. And that absolutely happened. But the Debo running back thing is getting a bit played out. Teams are figuring it out. They know exactly what the 49ers want to do. They're not being creative with it. And the Rams have seen it 3 times now, right? Up close and personal. And each time they got a little bit better. That final game, they really figured out how to play Jimmy Garoppolo and how to play this run game. They were the only team in the playoffs that actually were able to come in and probably out physical the 49ers, which is not something you see very often. I just don't believe that the 49ers, with some of the injuries they have, are going to be able to figure it out against a team that I think now might have the 49ers number based off that NFC Championship game. So we'll see how it plays out. I am picking the Rams 23-17. I do think it's close. I could see it being much lower scoring because we definitely talked about both defenses. Man, I have a hard time seeing the 49ers winning this one as bad as they are struggling offensively. I know the defense will show up. I know special teams will show up. I just don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo, especially without the best left tackle in the game. So I have to go with the Rams in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. Everything you said. And yeah, if the Rams can get any sort of play from their offensive line, they'll be in good shape. But that's definitely worrisome. So this is their true. We've talked on our show a bunch, and I know we're probably wrapping up, so sorry to steal the show here at the end, but we've talked on our show a bunch that this week 4, we had it after the Bills game, and we got past that, but it was like, okay, that's when we'll see what this team is made of, because to win a championship, you have to be at least competitive in the trenches. I know Cincinnati was the outlier with how bad their offensive line was, and just kind of rode some fluke stuff to get to the Super Bowl and had a good run. But I think now we're starting to see I know it's early in the season, but we're seeing more of their true colors a little bit. But for the Rams' sake, like, they need to put their big boy pants on, and we need to see in the trenches what they do on the offensive line specifically. So I think they do enough, but barely. But it should be another great one.
Yeah, no, it definitely will be a great one. And if the 49ers do win, then everybody just trust me when I put on the jinx and I go opposite, just know what I'm doing. All right. I got a method to the madness. So we'll definitely talk in the DMs, Ryan. Again, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody, as always, I encourage you to go subscribe to Ryan. Link is in the description. And if nothing else, just to troll Rams fans, do it, right? But also, whenever the 49ers draft a USC player or a Cal player or anybody from that region, you can also go to them and they will have conversations about these players and you'll know a lot about them. So highly recommend subscribing to him. Ryan is a great guy. He's doing some awesome things over at LAFB. Ryan, we will do it again when they play here in a few weeks. Thank you so much for joining me as always. Chat, thank you for being around. This was iffy. Ryan and I were back and forth. Happy that the hurricane did not hit us hard. I was able to keep power. Appreciate all of you who reached out, threw your thoughts and prayers my way. And I will be back at the very least Monday with playback to watch the game, but probably with another show later in the week. Appreciate y'all. Peace.